In today's show, another South African ransomware, OpenAI strikes a deal with the US military, and the anticipated Iranian hostilities commence. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening from. This is Priviso Live, your weekly South African deep dive into information security, ICT legislation, and artificial intelligence. I'm Lynn.
I'm Stephen.
And I'm Kayla. Grab your coffee or your rooibos if you're keeping it local, because today we're covering ransomware hitting a major South African bank, a very interesting post from Sam Altman, and some geopolitical developments that have security implications far beyond politics.
Let's start at home. My Broadband reported this week that the Land and Agricultural Development Bank of South Africa has confirmed being hit by a ransomware attack. Now, we won't speculate beyond the reporting, but what we can say is this: financial institutions remain prime targets.
Yeah, and this isn't new. Banks sit on high-value data, payment systems, identity records. It's basically a buffet for organized cybercrime. The question isn't why banks, it's why not.
What stood out for me is the operational disruption angle. When ransomware hits a financial institution, it's not just about data, it's about service continuity. ATMs, online banking, card systems, even short downtime shakes consumer trust.
Exactly. And under South Africa's Cybercrimes Act and PoPIA, incidents like this trigger notification obligations. There's regulatory exposure, reputational damage, and potentially class action risk.
Let's translate that for our practitioners listening. If you're in financial services, segmentation, tested backups, incident response rehearsals, and privileged access management are not optional controls. They're existential controls.
And please, immutable backups. If your backup server is domain joined and accessible from compromised admin credentials, it's not a backup, it's a hostage.
Well said. The pattern globally is clear. Ransomware groups are operating like disciplined businesses. Affiliates, revenue splits, leak sites. We are past the teenager in a hoodie narrative.
And in South Africa specifically, we need to remember, threat actors assume weaker enforcement environments. So defensive maturity has to compensate.
This week's big AI governance headlines come from the US, where one of the leading AI firms, Anthropic, drew a very clear red line with the Pentagon. The BBC reported that the company's boss, Dario Amodei, refused Pentagon demands to drop built-in safety safeguards from its models, specifically protections against mass surveillance and fully autonomous weaponry.
Yeah, it's rare to see a tech vendor publicly resist a national defense contract, especially when there's substantial money at stake. Anthropic's CEO said he cannot in good conscience remove those safeguards, even under pressure of having a major contract canceled.
And this isn't just semantics. The Pentagon wants models that can be used for any lawful purpose, which under US military policy could include data-intensive tasks like intelligence analysis or potentially weapons support. The company sees that as a slippery slope because today's AI isn't dependable enough for life and death decisions without human oversight. Remember, though, a number of media outlets report that the US military deployed an AI model developed by Anthropic called Claude as part of the operation to capture Venezuelan President Maduro. The model was reportedly used through a contractor partnership and assisted with tasks ranging from data analysis to supporting operational planning.
Think about that for a moment. An AI model being asked to operate at the edge of surveillance and autonomy without the guardrails the vendor believes are essential. That's not just a tech negotiation. That's a debate about safety, ethics, and legal responsibility in systems that could influence human survival decisions.
For us in information security, the debate reinforces how quickly operational technology intersects with ethical governance. If a commercial AI firm won't compromise on safeguards for a military use case, it tells you just how unsettled policies remain. That's relevant to anyone doing risk assessments on AI-enabled systems.
And from a governance perspective, it signals that core safety principles, like human in the loop and no mass surveillance, are not just theoretical. They're being tested under commercial, political, and legal pressure right now.
And in contrast, Sam Altman announced that his organization has reached an agreement with what he refers to as the Department of War to deploy AI models into a classified network.
That's not a small sentence, that's a structural shift. When frontier AI systems move into classified military environments, we're no longer talking about consumer tools or productivity assistance. We're talking about national security infrastructure. It also gives insights into the respective motivations of Anthropic and OpenAI, doesn't it?
But what stood out to me wasn't just the deployment, it was the framing. He emphasized safety principles, specifically prohibitions on domestic mass surveillance and human responsibility for the use of force, including autonomous weapons.
And that's crucial. From a governance standpoint, those are red-line principles. Human-in-the-loop control over force decisions is one of the most debated issues in AI ethics globally.
The interesting part for practitioners is this. Those principles are being codified into contractual agreements. That means safety isn't just policy language. It's enforceable structure.
He also mentioned technical safeguards and deploying field deployment engineers, FDEs, into the environment. That's significant. It suggests active oversight, not just model drop and run.
And note the cloud-only deployment. That implies containment. It reduces the risk of uncontrolled model replication or modification inside classified networks.
I have doubts. If foreign nations, by which I think specifically of China, deploy AI directly into military hardware, does anyone think these contracts won't be modified?
Anyway, Altman is also asking that the same terms be offered to all AI companies. That's essentially calling for an industry-wide baseline for military AI engagement.
Which introduces an interesting governance question. Should access to classified deployment require minimum safety standards across the board?
If we bring this back to South African practitioners, the lesson isn't about geopolitics. It's about institutional AI governance. When AI enters high-consequence environments, safeguards must move from aspirational to operational.
And operational means measurable. Logged, auditable, tested.
The statement ends with something telling, the world is a complicated, messy, and sometimes dangerous place. That's a recognition that AI will operate in imperfect contexts. Speaking of which, let's address the geopolitical developments circulating this week.
As we anticipated in last week's episode, and as we record this, it is reported that a joint American and Israeli operation has started bombing Iranian targets. This follows the failed nuclear negotiations between the US and Iran this week, with both countries refusing to budge on their demands.
This follows weeks of preparation. Then 2 days ago, the United States ambassador to Israel reputedly authorized departure for non-essential embassy personnel.
I imagine pizza parlors around the Pentagon are doing a thriving business.
Authorized departure is a formal State Department status. It doesn't automatically mean conflict is imminent, but it does signal elevated risk assessment.
From a security perspective, geopolitical tension equals cyber tension. Historically, periods of military escalation correlate with increased cyber activity, espionage, defacements, DDoS campaigns.
Financial institutions, logistics firms, energy providers, they often become collateral targets in state-aligned cyber operations.
So what's the takeaway for South African organizations? Even if the conflict isn't local, global interconnected systems mean spillover risk.
Supply chains, cloud providers, international banking rails. If something destabilizes airspace or infrastructure in one region, digital ripple effects follow.
And misinformation risk increases dramatically. We saw how quickly that embassy email narrative turned into a countdown story online.
Which highlights something critical for CISOs, crisis communications discipline. During fast-moving geopolitical events, your employees will read social media before they read official briefings.
So your internal comms must be factual, calm, and measured. Don't amplify rumors. Acknowledge uncertainty.
I love how Stephen says measured, like he doesn't forward WhatsApp voice notes from uncles.
That was one time, Kayla.
Guys, focus. Anyway, let's synthesize this episode. We have ransomware locally, rapid AI acceleration globally, and geopolitical volatility internationally.
3 different headlines. One common theme: systemic risk velocity.
Things are moving faster, technically, politically, operationally.
Which means governance frameworks must become adaptive. Static annual risk reviews are insufficient in dynamic environments.
Continuous monitoring, threat intelligence integration, scenario-based tabletop exercises.
And don't forget, people, security culture is still your strongest control layer.
Final thought from each of us. Stephen?
Ransomware is not a surprise event anymore. If you're surprised, you're underprepared.
AI isn't the risk, uncontrolled deployment is.
And geopolitical events remind us that cyber risk doesn't exist in isolation. It mirrors the real world.
And maybe read beyond the headline before declaring World War III.
And there you have it. This has been Priviso Live. We hope you found today's episode interesting. If you did, please share it with your colleagues, your friends, your family. Word of mouth is a strong driver of podcast growth.
If you want to hear more of the same, subscribe to Priviso Live on Apple, Samsung, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or YouTube.
And if you need security, risk, or ICT legislation advice, contact Priviso Consulting directly at admin@priviso.co.za.
And if you have topics you'd like us to cover, or questions about anything we discussed today, reach out to us. We love hearing from our listeners.
I'm Steven.
And I'm Kayla. Thanks for listening.
Stay secure.
safe, everyone.
Stay safe.